You've been thinking about getting a divorce, but you're not sure where to start. Stay tuned for my next local business spotlight on what you need to know if you're thinking about getting a divorce. Hey guys, it's Peggy Yee here with Frankly Realtors, and I am here today with Nathan Olson from Cooper Ginsberg Gray, which is a local family law firm here in Fairfax, Virginia. And so Nathan's practice is devoted entirely to family law matters, which include, divorce, property division, custody and visitation matters. He also does prenuptial agreements and adoption cases. And he's also certified as a mediator by the Supreme Court of Virginia. So I'm really excited to have Nathan here with us on our local business spotlight. So Nathan, tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you ended up getting into family law and what is it?
Well, thanks for that, Peggy. I'm excited to be on this and one of your esteemed guests. So so family law really is mostly divorce. It's more of an umbrella term that we use because not all of our cases are divorce cases. We really deal with any family law matter that's really outside of, let's say, family planning. So we don't deal with, wills, trust, or estates, but anything related to divorce, so custody, child support, property division. We would also deal with, child support modifications, spousal support. We do adoptions, some uncontested adoptions. We handle protective orders, which some people also know as restraining orders. In other words, just general family law matters. Now, how I got into family law, well, that's an interesting story. I was in law school and I was checking off things that I knew I didn't want to do. And I was in my third year and I thought, well, I haven't chosen anything I want to do. I've only chosen things I don't want to do. So, where do I go from here? And I actually got linked up with the firm I'm at now in a clinical program handling some uncontested divorces. And essentially, they offered me, to stay on as a paid intern after that clinical program was over. And I just haven't given back the key in 14 years. So they're stuck with me.
Awesome.
In a sense.
Awesome.
So I've worked for the same firm, ever since I was in law school. So it's the only firm I've ever worked for. And we've gone from essentially 3 attorneys before I started, and then 4 once I joined, and now we have 9 and almost the same number of staff. So we've grown quite a bit, and a unique little business family we've got going on.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, to be somewhere for 14 years, it must be a great place to be. So you must be really happy there. So that's awesome.
Right. Well, it's a good group of people to work with, and especially in times like this, it's good to work with people that you know and trust and have a good working relationship with.
Yeah, so obviously this quarantine period and all of this stuff is changed a lot of our businesses. I know for myself, right, showings are down. We still are doing showings, and the market is still running, and people are buying and selling. But definitely we've changed our business practices, to still show houses while it's still being safe. But tell me more about kind of what's happening in your world and how you guys are reacting to it.
Yeah, right. Well, in March, I believe it was 16th, the Virginia Supreme Court handed down a judicial emergency decree, which basically shut the courts for the most part down. The courts are handling some emergency matters in terms of actual hearings, and you can still file things, but beyond that, the courts have largely shut down. And we're finding that some emergency matters are being held, such as a refusal to provide the children to the other parent, or one parent threatening to take the children out of state, those sorts of things, as well as protective orders. But beyond that, in terms of family law, we're not really seeing a lot of judges having hearings right now. And just yesterday, the Virginia Supreme Court extended their judicial emergency through May 17th. So that has really caused people to try to look for alternate ways of handling matters. And the court itself has instituted, or is in the process of instituting, some telehearings, in other words, virtual platforms through WebEx and similar programs to try to move some things along, because there's going to be quite a backlog of cases once the courts open back up. So every court's a little bit different. Every county has a little bit different ways of doing things, but I think they're all finding that they need to find new ways of doing things so that this backlog isn't insurmountable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we're lucky in terms of real estate that way, because I guess the courts are still open for closings and recordings and stuff like that. So we're still
Right.
able to move forward with our closings. But definitely, more like remote closings. A lot of lenders are allowing like remote signings now, and just trying to figure out all of the ways that we can do things virtually just because we have to now, and we have to figure out a way to keep moving forward.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah. And it's hard. In courtrooms, depending upon how large they are, it's hard to socially distance when you've got maybe even a jury, which aren't typical or really at all in family law cases. But, you've got a judge, you've got a bailiff, you've got parties, witnesses, attorneys. It can be very difficult to socially distance and do a hearing. So,
yeah, definitely. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, with this quarantine period, right? People are in their homes and they're probably like with their spouse and family a lot more than they're used to. As a mediator, like, can you like share with some like tips or kind of experience of how you might want to mediate within your own family?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would be probably much more popular if I could offer advice on how to deal with quarantine. But I think that what I'm finding is that in some circumstances, staying and changing your world and changing your routine and things like that, people are finding out maybe they had differences with their spouse that they didn't realize. And I think that my words of advice on that front is that, this isn't going to be in place for forever. And there's obviously a reason that you're with your spouse, and focus on the positives instead of the negatives. But if there is a situation where you are, it just isn't working, and you want to try to separate when the time is right and to preserve your rights, certain things if I'm a mediator and I'm looking at the case, making sure you've got a decent grasp on what the finances are, so that you're not in the dark. I mean, oftentimes mediation works, but when it doesn't work, a lot of the times it's because the people are not on the same page in terms of information. One person feels like they have much less information, much less educated about the situation, and they're concerned about agreeing to something if they don't really know all of the information. And even if that person is in my office asking me for advice, not as a mediator, but as an attorney, it's difficult for me to provide them advice if they don't have enough information. And so that can be an impediment to an agreement or to a successful mediation. So, that's one thing that we do see. And it's going to be interesting to see when this quarantine period is over and we all move on with our lives, hopefully without a concern for the COVID-19 into the future, what things look like, and how many more cases are we going to get? Is it just going to be we're picking up on the backlog, or is it going to be a flood of new cases because we're all in such close quarters, and that's not going to work for some people.
Right.
So it's kind of wait and see.
Yeah. So what kind of information do you think people should be prepared with, or to be like trying to find out at this period if they like maybe are thinking about getting divorced?
Yeah.
Like what are things that they should be like doing now?
Well, I mean, if you have kids, what have you thought about in terms of where the kids are going to live? Because they can't live in the two places at the same time, right? And you can't divide them down the middle. They're not a piece of property that you can split in half. So have you thought about that? Have you thought about, if you're going to move out, how far away are you going to move? If the children are very young, what's going to be the care schedule? If they're in school, what school are they going to go to? Those sorts of things. And in terms of, finances, what's your spouse's income? Do you know what your spouse's income is? Where are your assets? Are they in checking and savings accounts? Are they in more sophisticated stock accounts or mutual funds or somewhere else? Do you even know where all the accounts are? What debt do you have? Does your spouse have debt that you don't know about? Or were they always bad with money, when you were during your marriage, and you're worried that they have credit card debt out there that you don't even know about? So and people come into my office all the time and say, I don't have all of the financial information. And that's okay. You don't need every little bit, but have a general knowledge of, the universe of finances is helpful. And have an idea of what you think is a fair resolution. And obviously, people go to lawyers for advice, but they also go to lawyers when they can't agree with their spouse. So your version of what's fair might not be his or her version of what's fair, but at least have an idea in your mind of what you think is fair. Mm-hmm. Give your attorney something to work off of.
Yeah. So I guess maybe at least a lot of, during this kind of quarantine period, kind of a lot of introspection of like, okay, what do I really want? So that the conversation with you can be really productive.
Right. And I think a misconception that people often have is, if I see a divorce attorney, that means that I have to get divorced, or that it means that, my marriage is over. Much like, if you go to see a estate planning attorney and get a will, it doesn't mean you're going to die tomorrow. It means you're gaining information and you're planning for the future. And so you may have, doubt in your mind about whether the relationship is working, but maybe not ready to say, I'm going to separate. And coming in, having a consultation with an attorney can be a very educational process. Just getting some information about what happens if, and just because you've met with an attorney doesn't mean you're locked into anything, and I think it can kind of seem that way for some folks, but definitely not. And I have a fair number of people who come in and just say, hey, look, I'm just here for information. And if they have that information and they never really need it, they never really need to apply it, well, great. I'm very happy for them and wish them all the best. So introspection. And I will say that our firm also offers, we actually have a mental health professional on staff. She's a divorce coach, and she is very good about dealing with the more personal side of a separation and divorce. So she deals with, the emotions that you're feeling, kind of the roller coaster of emotions that you go through, how to tell your kids about a divorce, what to say to them depending on how old they are, how to talk to your ex or your soon-to-be ex that once we're very close to, but now have a very difficult time communicating because you say up and he says down, you say left and he says right, and you can't agree on anything. And whether that's because of anger or spite or because you have fundamental differences, she often can help our clients, get to a point of using certain strategies to communicate with their exes, which is important because communication is key during this period of uncertainty that folks are in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. A lot of things to think about even before you get divorced. And that totally resonates with me because I've been actually telling a lot of our buyer clients, hey, just get pre-approved right now. It doesn't you don't have to buy a house, but just get pre-approved. So you have the time right now. You can search through your documents and do all this stuff while, you're not, you don't have to buy a house. So sounds like talking with you, actually this probably could be a really great time to talk with you, at a virtual consultation or something like that.
Right,
and then if they do, want to proceed, then, when the time is right for them, they could do that. So.
Yeah. And most law firms, including mine, offer at this point really exclusively virtual meetings. We also do telephone meetings, but for those who want face-to-face contact, we do virtual meetings. And I'm even doing virtual mediations now where I have, through a platform such as GoToMeeting or WebEx, we have the mediation on a secure virtual platform where everybody attends virtually. And I actually had a mediation that started in person and then finished virtually. So that was interesting.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. It's just a sign of the times, right? Things still need to move forward, especially very personal things, right? That can't just be put on hold. So,
and who knows if it's going to be the future. We were talking earlier, innovation by necessity, and certain things going to just be the new normal because they were a necessity at one point.
Right.
Yeah,
I know we've been talking about, even just the commercial real estate sector, what's going to happen there if, companies do realize that, oh, maybe I don't need all this space. My staff can actually work at home. So, a lot of different things that could come out of this, all this COVID-19 stuff.
Yeah. And, there are some folks who are in agreement, they're separating and getting divorced, but, they're not having World War III. They're essentially agreeing on things. and they might say, and they might have made a decision in December. All right, look, we're going to wait and put the house on the market in April. The best time to put the house on the market is in April, so we can get the best price. And they waited, and all of a sudden now in April, you can only do virtual showings, or maybe not only, but showings and open houses are extremely limited. And like, oh, was that a good decision or not? And are we going to push forward and list it in April, or are we going to hold off and list it, in the fall when hopefully you can have an open house and maybe have more eyes on your property? So yeah, we just don't know right now. There's again a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah. Yep. And then what I'm telling my clients too is, like in the next situation, right, where like, let's say you're getting divorced and you're planning to put the house on the market, right? And in those cases, sometimes people like they really do need to just sell their house, right? And so it's like not a matter of I can wait to sell my house, but like if they really need to sell their house, yes, we can do it. If you're like older and you're like don't really need to sell your house, like now is probably not the right time to sell, but there are people out there that still need to sell, and that's like who we're really trying to help right now.
Exactly. And there's always folks who are concerned, look, I want to keep the house because the kids are used to being there. He or she is fine with that. They're moving out, but can I afford to keep the house? And what's involved in that, or does the house have to sell? And again, when are we going to sell it, and that sort of thing. So I suppose that's where your profession and my profession intersect a little bit.
Yep, exactly. Like how that we could work together, right? Because you can use me as a resource on your team, right? If there's a client that does have a house that they need to sell, or that's part of the the agreement or whatever that is, then being able to help with that aspect of it. At least.
Yeah. Or even, like I said earlier, just checking with someone to say, hey, look, how's the real estate climate out there? Is it good for buying or selling? And, do you want to try to pinpoint the best time to do it to get the best price?
Right. Yeah. And I'm always happy to, to help with those kinds of things where they just need like a home value or like, where do you think this market's going? And it's just advising them on their specific situation, right? Because sometimes it's, okay, you don't need to sell right now, just wait it out. Other times it's like, if you want to preserve like equity and you got to get it, a certain amount, then you need to sell it now, just whatever their situation is.
Right.
And then of course, just like what you said, talking to me does not mean you have to sell your house. Let's just have a conversation.
Right. So, well, I have a, if you don't mind, I have a question for you that you can throw back at me, if you'd like, which is, when you're out there selecting a real estate agent, what should you look for? What are the things, a lot of people find things just by Googling them these days, and you really don't know if they're the best because they're on the first page or because they've paid to be on the first page. And so what would you recommend that people look for when they hire a listing or a real estate agent?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely, doing your due diligence and looking at a couple different options. Like the reason I got into real estate was because, I thought all real estate agents were the same. And I picked a really, really bad one to help me in my first home sale. And it went just so bad that's how I actually got into real estate, like switched careers and I'm doing this now full time. So I would definitely, do your research. I think you can ask friends and family for their referrals. Like I do a lot of business on referral. So things like that where, if somebody else had a really great experience and that's somebody that you trust, like attorneys, financial planners, CPAs, other people that kind of know, know about your money and like kind of what you want to do. Those are great places to get referrals.
Gotcha.
And if you don't have anybody like that, then, then definitely talking with the agent about their track record, their results, how really dig into how they get, clients the best deal possible, things like that. I would just definitely ask questions versus just picking the first person online or the first person you meet, because that's totally how I did it and it didn't end up very well.
Right. Well, that's good. That's good information.
Yeah. So same thing. So back to you then.
Okay,
how would you pick a family law attorney or a divorce attorney?
Yeah. I mean, I think that any professional that you hire, I think that, asking friends or family if they have had a good experience with someone is great. I mean, we have all the technology now and have everything at our fingertips, but keep in mind that again, things online can be manipulated. You can pay to have, it used to be, people put, 4 A's in their title of their business, so they were listed first in the phone book. That's kind of the same thing now, is to essentially manipulate search engines so that you can be at the very top. Whether that's just most, I guess, straightforward way of doing it is just paying to be at the top. And does that mean that you're the best out there, or does that mean that you're sinking the most money into advertising? And there could be a correlation there, but likely not. And so, really asking around and getting personal referrals, and then interviewing folks. I mean, you don't have to go with the first attorney that you meet with, and it is a little bit of a cash investment, especially if the attorney is charging you for the consult, which most good attorneys do. But interviewing them, do they have the right style for you? Are they aggressive enough for you? Are they too aggressive for you? Are they pitching things to you and pressuring you to do things that you're not really necessarily ready to do or comfortable with? Any attorney should give you an upfront and clear billing policies about how you're going to be billed and how often you're going to be billed, and essentially what they're going to be charging you. That's extremely important. Them communicating with you. Our firm sets generally a standard of, we will get back to you within 24 hours. For any communication, even if it's just, hey, look, I'm in trial right now, I'll get back to you when I'm out of trial, just to let them know that we got their message. I think that's a good policy, and I think most good attorneys will have that policy, because you should be able to get in touch with the person you've hired. And again, like any professional, just get somebody that you are comfortable with, because this is somebody that you're going to be dealing with during a very difficult time in your life, and you want to know that you have a good working relationship with them. You shouldn't always be at odds with your attorney. There are some times when an attorney even a good attorney won't endorse a path that you want to do, and that's okay. But you shouldn't be at odds with your attorney, And I think, again, like in choosing any professional, it comes down to your level of comfort with that person. And I don't think that comes from just picking the first person that you see.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So we have that overlap as well.
Yep. Totally. Well, Nathan, thank you so much for being on here. I think we covered a whole bunch of topics.
All right.
And I definitely learned a lot. So that was really great.
That's great. Well, I'm happy to be on. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. So what's the best way for somebody to contact you?
Sure. You can visit our website. Our law firm is called Cooper Ginsberg Gray. That's Ginsberg with an E and a Gray, Gray. The website is www.cgglawyers.com. My profile is under there. My phone number at the firm is 703-934-1480. And then my email is my first initial and last name. So it's NOLSON@cgglawyers.com.
Okay, perfect. And then we'll put all of Nathan's contact information as well in the show notes below, so you'll have that in writing too. And yes, thank you so much for being on here.
Thank you, Peggy. My pleasure.